Hello, YouTube. Same build, but the footage was recorded much more recently. So level 80, Pyromancer, lots of fun. Wanted to play on a little more since the last time I had played on it had been 2 or so months. And would you believe that that 1 minute intro I just showed you was the final minute of a 9-minute invasion? It wasn't too much to gawk at, unfortunately. The first 8 or so minutes was just me killing a phantom of the host, him getting 2 blues, and stalling for way too long in the deep root depths until eventually I baited them to that little cavern full of ants, which gave me just the edge I needed to overwhelm that 3v1. And you got the best part of it, so nothing to cry over. Now, some of you may have taken a moment and gawked at the thumbnail I threw together, and as of today, May 21st, the story trailer for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC has come out, and I was tempted to do a little bit of a deep dive on it, but having watched it a few times, there are a few more details, but not enough in my mind to warrant a video from me. There's more authoritative sources who will speculate to your heart's content, but don't worry, I'm going to be planning the lore Bible for when I do the extension to the lore through, which will be very exciting. I want the game's DLC to have been out just a little bit. I want to play through it once. I know for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, I want to play through it, record it with Sieghelm, the same character I took through the main lore through. Just continue his adventure a little bit, the spell sword, strength, int build, whatever you want to call it. And I was tempted to play on that same character on my own time, but then I would have to either go to New Game Plus or rehash the character from scratch in order to play on him again for the recording. And I was thinking, well, maybe there's a different build I would like to play through the DLC on, and I'm sure there has been plenty of discourse on this. And that this seems rather late, but what sort of build? This is so silly. I can't ignore what's going on screen right now. These fellows wanted to have a bare-fisted duel for a little bit, and it took a bit. It took a good bit. And so I sped up the footage here. And so you won't get bored, but eventually they get bored, and they draw their swords, and the whole tone of the fight changes. So that'll be on screen for your viewing pleasure. But talking about builds I want to take into the DLC, some people have made some very compelling arguments for taking an arcane build into the new DLC. Why? Well, arcane is essentially the luck stat. It leads to item discovery, and with increased item discovery, you can, of course, get items from the new mobs and see what they are rather early. And you'll have a higher likelihood of running into those items if you're running an arcane build. And of course, if I run an arcane build, I'd probably designate a slot for the Silver Scarab Talisman, the one that buffs item discovery, and then just be munching those Silver Toad Foul Feet as much as I can spare within reason, just to buff those chances even further. So an arcane build might be fun. I don't know if I'd want it to necessarily be a bleed build. Might just do a physical build with the arcane stat if it's less than optimal, or maybe I want to do a hybrid build that's more like a strength arcane build or something. I don't know. But that seems like a very alluring option. Another option that seems particularly alluring is a healing build. A faith build, more or less, but with plenty of heals and just the means to have a good mana pool to just up that survivability, maybe some damage resistance incantations as well to make sure I take fewer hits. A faith build sounds nice because you're exploring a new environment. The DLCs for Souls games tend to be a little harder than the base game, though they have teased that the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC will be about as difficult as the latter part of the Elden Ring base game, so it may not necessarily be harder, but new stuff tends to be harder because you're not familiar with it, you need to adapt, and familiarity makes it a lot easier to deal with the threats that the lands between throws in. So a faith build also sounds pretty nice, since I will likely be doing some variant of a spell sword build on Sieghelm, my lore through character, for the actual recorded playing of the DLC. And I know that was long and that was rambling, but I'm just thinking about it out loud while I'm doing my own personal podcast here. But I would like to hear from you, dear viewer. What kind of build do you think you'll be taking into the DLC? Will you be going into the DLC at a meta level 125, maybe a little early, like 90? Or maybe you'll take a 125 and level them up to 138 during the course of the DLC, just in case you find a neat weapon along the way that you're just missing a few precious points for. Maybe you're the sort of fellow who wants to go into the DLC with the best damage type for that DLC so you can have the easiest time. Though unfortunately the trailers haven't really lent themselves to any discernible damage type that'll be better than the others just yet. Though, I have a feeling fire's not going to be so good on Mesmer. Big fiery snake boy just doesn't feel like a good fit. The rest of the DLC, who knows? Maybe fire will be awesome for most of it. Couldn't tell you. I know for the very end of Elden Ring, Holy as a damage type feels bad. Especially against the very last few bosses. It just doesn't do well. Feels very bad. And Magic also doesn't feel too good on the last couple bosses. So, you know, maybe you want to go with a physical build because it's hard for every physical build to get snuffed out. I just recall Midir from the Ring City DLC for Dark Souls 3 and how Midir was resistant to darn everything, and even his weakness, air quotes, lightning, he was still fairly resistant to. He was just a little less resistant to lightning than he was most of the other elements, making him a chore to fight with his huge health pool. Then again, Midir, I still find my easiest strategy for fighting / cheesing Midir was using Pestilent Mist, because it was that white mist attack that did a percentage of life per tick, and ignoring resistances, making it an ideal choice for one such as Midir with his high resistances. Now, Night Maiden's Mist in this game, it's analog. It does flat damage, I believe. I don't think it's a percentage. Still very good, still could be helpful, but probably not as helpful for a big old boss like that, especially since the mist makes it so you can't really approach the boss if you can get them to linger in the cloud. So, that's probably the question. I feel somewhat foolish with the idea of taking a magic character into the DLC, mostly because, given the trailers we've seen thus far, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in the realm of sorceries or magic. I believe we saw one brief instance of gravity, which I don't know if it's true gravity that'll take an instat to wield, or if it'll be a strength weapon with an int requirement. Hard to say. Look at that poor guy. Turns the whole fight around when he gets just absolutely death blighted. And this person, I'm able to keep on them. The friend dynamic was really supporting him more than I thought. And when they're panic rolling that much, even a casual like myself can roll catch ya with just a little bit of patience. Though if I were to attempt to wrap up my thoughts on what builds should be taken into the DLC, I have a feeling like most of the base game of Elden Ring, Faith builds are going to have the most fun. It feels like there's going to be the most tasty treats for them, especially since there seems to be a little bit of extra love for incantations, crucible incantations. There was a bear head in one of the trailers that seemed to be summoned much the way the dragon heads are summoned, so maybe Faith Arcane will make a comeback, or maybe it'll just be Faith. I don't know, but I have a feeling that if you were to take Faith into the DLC and make sure you have access to fire as well as Holy, you're probably going to be very well pleased with what you will find. There'll be lots of tasty treats for you. I feel it. Faith builds have historically gotten the short end of the stick in the previous titles, and so the fact that Elden Ring has a ton of incantations and a ton of Faith weapons and multiple damage types available to Faith builds, it just stands to reason there's gonna be a little more of that. Hard to get around it, but that's okay, that's okay. Martial builds and sorceries have had their time in the sun, and sorceries are still plenty good in this game. And they're flashy and they look good, and they're a little bland if you think of them as just projectiles, but if you use them as a little flavoring, a little extra seasoning on top of a different sort of build, you'll have a great time. Or even the melee sorcerer is very flavorful, as opposed to earlier titles. So everything's really gotten improved across the series, I think. Quality of life, the kinds of builds, and how they look and feel. All of it's been improved, but incantations and Faith have certainly had the biggest helping hand, and they really needed it at the end of the day. What a nice little duel with the honest solo host. What a unicorn to find out in the wild, my goodness. I know people run into solo hosts all the time, but usually they have the circlet on, which allows blues to filter into their world ad nauseum. They're camped out by a grace and not by anything that can potentially harm them. But that person looked like they were honestly exploring the lands between. There wasn't a grace anywhere in sight. They were moving about, doing their own thing. Kudos to them. I don't see them nearly enough, which gives the rest of the, they're the shining light, while all the other solo hosts are fake solo hosts with their fake duels and snares and entrapments, which they're allowed to have, absolutely, but it does get a bit old after a while. Here's a silly topic I wanted to bring forth to my few but splendid viewers. If you are going to talk to a friend of yours, and they wanted to play Elden Ring, and they were not familiar with the Souls series in general, what sort of build would you recommend to them, especially if they wanted to do the PvP? I find myself, having not played for a little bit but coming back, I'm not sure what I want to do, what sort of build I want to do next. Kind of out in the air. I'll think of something, for sure, and I'll put out a video soon enough, probably within a week. That seems to be my normal time frame. I'm not sure what to go with. The strength build seems beloved, but maybe I should do something a little different. I know that I'm not new to the franchise, and I'm mapping this question onto myself, but I'm curious what build would be the best for learning the PvP outright. It seems that strength would be a strong choice, or maybe just a raw dex build. Lightning's a very good element. Hard to get around it. I haven't done a dex lightning build in a little bit, I don't think, so maybe that would be the way to go. It's just not appealing to me, because I know what it entails, though I should probably approach it with a fresh outlook. Really reinvent my preconceived notions and find love for it. There's nothing wrong with Dex, honestly. It's just me. I'm the problem. I just don't really care for katanas or the Guardian Sword Spear or things like that. And I know there's other ways to play it. There's lots of good weapons. So here I am, fighting a gank squad, right? New thought, new idea. And I'm getting them to smack Kale and his mule, which is absolutely devilish behavior. But you're ganking in Liurnia at level 80. You had a 3-man squad and you're just sitting around doing nothing of value. It's weird. I wonder what's going on in the minds of these people. And they're allowed to do this. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. Sometimes people have plenty of fun with gank squads. Must be some kind of enjoyment to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it at all, right? I wonder how often they win these ganks. It must be a majority, otherwise they wouldn't do it anymore, right? If they did nothing but lose, they wouldn't play, I imagine. Maybe they're more resilient than I think they are, but given how they crumble when they are divided, I don't think that's the case. Also, did I say Liurnia earlier? I meant to say good old Limgrave. That's on me. Little slip of the tongue there. And I must add, I've been completely derailed. I was having some trouble with Adobe Premiere. It was lagging in an interesting way. It would continue to play audio, but it wouldn't pause or stop on command. It would be a significant delay. And so I looked it up online. One person recommended resetting my cache and preferences. I figured, I don't have a whole lot of preferences. Let's give it a go. Did it. Could not find my project file for ages. Skill issue, I know, it's on me. I should have it in a place where I can easily find it. But for some reason, Adobe had saved it on a hard drive I swear I have not used in years. But I digress. I did find it, I'm back to it, and my whole thought process has been absolutely and completely derailed. Now I'm at a little bit of a loss for what I was going to talk about. I knew I had like a couple ideas lined up. They're gone now. Absolutely gone. If I were to guess what I was thinking of, I think I was going to assume that recommending lightning dexterity at least for a new player. We're going back to the idea of recommending a build for your friend who's new to the game, and it's not me. I'm not mapping it on myself anymore. I probably wouldn't recommend the lightning flavor of dex. Regular dexterity would be fine, mostly because of how long it takes to get to Lanedale to get the wet blade to actually use the lightning infusion. It's just too far back there, and for the average player who might get lost exploring every nook and cranny, or maybe they'll run straight through it, doubt it. But without spoilers, if they're trying to experience the game organically for the first time, they probably aren't going to find that wet blade. well, finding the Iron Wet Blade in Scornvale Castle will be a lot more likely. So, that's the end of that thought, I suppose. I would recommend for a new player probably just a run-of-the-mill strength build, because you can get the Iron Wet Blade relatively early with next to no spoilers. But yes, that's what I would like to hear from you, dear viewer. I know I've already iterated that in some way, but what sort of build would you recommend to a new player? What do you think, for somebody who has no concept of the Souls series, what would people easily latch onto? What sort of easy-to-use build do you think they could throw together conceivably? I feel like, to not get lost in the minutia and the nuances of a Souls game, I would say do a vigor build, trust me, and just leave it at that and see what they come up with. Because, yet again, any damage stat should be secondary to vigor. They'll probably have the most success going that route. I actually had a work friend respond to a message I had sent them previously, where I had requested that they send me their build and their fashion, and it would come with no judgment or critiques at all. And they did it, and they are like a level 107, primarily a intelligence build, but I was astounded because they had 49 intelligence and 40 vigor at level 107, which, you know, could be better, but given that their vigor stat was within 10 points of their primary damage stat for a first real playthrough of the game, I was so proud of them that they just intuited that health was that vital. That's, you don't see that too often. I still have people who are more casual players of this game in my life who insist that you don't need that much health. Just dodge, bro. Just don't need it. And it's the silliest meme how it doesn't matter how often you reiterate people need vigor. There's always those who think they know better. And it's those people who often don't have enough exposure to the game or any of the other games in the franchise. All in all, I am terribly excited for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC because all of that fresh meat is going to come around. All of those casual players, all the people who don't insist on leveling vigor. Those people who showed up, enjoyed their 100-hour RPG, and left blissfully unaware. Meanwhile, I'm going to be practicing. Will I get good? No, but I hope to be good enough that by the time that DLC rolls around, I'm going to have so much fun with that PvP. I may not be the biggest fish in the pond, but by sheer numbers, there's going to be enough fish in the pond that I will feel big enough. It's going to be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Golly, I sure do love that square off shield break or guard break. It feels so good. And to leave you, I'm going to have this one last invasion. Ends on a funny note. I really appreciate it. It's these moments that make the whole trek of being a bad red man worthwhile, in my opinion. Hopefully I didn't ruin their night, but that's the experience. That's the cost when you play co-op. You risk the bad red man coming around and ruining your fun, spoiling it thoroughly. But I digress. It's been nice having you around. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to that DLC coming out. I hope you share some of your plans concerning it if you feel so inclined. Me, on the other hand, I'm going to be busy wrestling with Adobe Premiere because it's been a very bad child and has been giving me loads of grief during the latter end of this video for some largely unexplained reason. Now sit back, relax, enjoy the rest of this footage, and I'll sign off early and see you in the next one. Bye now.